Thank you for joining us in today's presentation of Is Your Website at Risk? The seven steps to a more secure CMS website provided to you by Core PHP along with our sponsors. Core PHP would like to thank our sponsors for making this webinar accessible to those that are watching. Joomla Art Template Club, provider of advanced Joomla and Magento themes. CMS Connection, connecting tomorrow's CMSs today. Arvix Web Hosting, unmatched, reliable, and affordable web hosting. JVitals Digital Technologies Incorporated, advanced components from registration to forms. And Joomla Shack, provider of top online courses, easy-to-use templates and extensions from Joomla. Core PHP provides extensive application development for Joomla, WordPress, and Drupal. Website development and print design services. Complete and comprehensive security, audits, and reviews. Today's topic will be about 7 steps to providing a better security for your website or websites. Security is increasingly more important today than it ever was. More companies are relying on their websites to provide revenue and sales for their company. By protecting the assets, your website, you are protecting your revenue stream for yourself and your clients. Shortly after this presentation, we will be providing some special offers. Tom Canavan, our guest speaker, is an author of the book CMS Security Handbook and Joomla Web Security. He's one of the top CMS security professionals in our industry. His background includes working heavily in the Fortune 500 space for many years with companies including Dell Computer, AST Research, and a defense manufacturer. He is a former CIO, codes in PHP, and has presented a handful of times at the CMS Expo. Without further delay, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Tom Canavan.
Stephen, I appreciate it. And I appreciate every one of you dialing in today. We have a record crowd signed up for this, about 600 people, so that really tells me how important this topic is to everyone. Before we get started, and you don't really need to reply to us, I just want you to ask yourself, out of all these numbers, or none of the above, how many sites are hacked every day? Pick one, what would you think it would be? You might be surprised to learn that it's actually 30,000 websites are being hacked every day, according to a recent report from Sophos Labs. That's a tremendous amount of sites that just are being taken over, being abused, and being hacked for really quite simple stuff. Why is this happening? Why is that? I'm a big kind of proponent of asking the why question. In my mind, it's because administrators and business owners are failing to, or not doing it at all. That is, taking care of security, not allocating budgets. They don't have a plan as to what happens if there's a hack, because hacks are going to happen from time to time, and it's just a fact of the computing business. You're going to make a mistake even if you're on top of your game completely. So how much more so if you're ignoring some of these obvious things? Again, I'm Tom Canavan. I'm author of the book CMS Security Handbook. I've been in the computer industry a very long time and watched a lot of things change. The one thing that hasn't changed is some of the base security principles that have been around forever. The open source world, however, is just now coming up to speed in terms of some of those things and are getting it thrust in their face very quickly, especially the CMS space that grew up organized by individuals and around the world and what have you. So before we get into the 7 steps, let's talk about a real quick enterprise security principle. If you imagine on the right the 3-legged stool, if you took away any of the legs, the stool wouldn't stand. Security is more than just a hack. Security is more than just patching. Security is more than just your favorite plugin or extension or security service. Security really involves 3 things here called confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And that's the acronym of that is CIA. Confidentiality means to us that it ensures that those who should have access to our site or our resources have it, and quite frankly, those who don't. Integrity means that we know if the information has been modified, it'll be detected. So in other words, we've got systems in place to tell us if something's happened, if something is wrong, if a database is corrupt, if a file changed, in that sense, that integrity of the file must be maintained, and we must know if it changed, so we can trust that information. Availability is ensuring the information can be accessed when it's needed. So let's think about that for a brief second. If you lose a hard drive in your server, is your server available? Well, it depends, but pretend that was the only one. Then no, it's not available, and yes, you have just failed in the CIA model, not because of a hacker, but because of a physical failure. The 7 steps we have here are extremely basic and often ignored, so we're going to talk through each one of these, and feel free to post questions out on our question board. We'll try and get them answered, and the ones we can't get answered, we'll certainly be sending out an email after the fact with answers to the questions we didn't reach. So top of our list is passwords, everybody's favorite bad subject. I'm sure if you do any administration in a company or at a help desk, you probably heard that, oh, that password's too hard. Make it easy because, quote, I can't remember it, or any number of other things like that. Well, that is one of the biggest ways that hackers get in, is very simple passwords. Take a look at this brief list, and you'll note that these are very common, easy to guess passwords. So common is kills. We like complex, hard passwords because they can't be as easily broken, they can't be as easily guessed, or what have you. You'll notice on here there's one on the far right called password with a 0, or P@SSW0RD. I actually had a boss one time tell me to make that the password to our server because he couldn't remember the passwords. Not kidding. So there's a link at the bottom, and we'll show this link again in a short form. But think about that. These are just a handful of words found to be in hacker dictionaries, found to be in use against all kinds of attacks by Security Labs. When we're talking to CMS crowds, one of the things that always comes up is, well, I'm not worried about the password because it's hashed. Let's just talk about what hashing is for just a brief second. Hashing is a mathematical function that takes your password and creates this string you see on the left called the hash. Theoretically, it can't be broken. In reality, MD5 was broken a long time ago. Most hashes can be broken with enough time and effort by the computing power available today. To kind of augment or to solve that problem, we came up with the idea of salting. Salting is adding a little bit of code or random data, if you will, to the password during the hashing process to give it a very unique flavor. However, with that said, you'll notice here, now to be fair, these are unsalted MD5 passwords. However, these are cracked as of the 14th of September, which was what, 3 or 4 days ago? And this came from an online site that anybody could find. Now, why this is a problem? Because all CMSs are open source, and that's the big thing that we like is open source. We can see the code and what have you. We can also see the code, how the hashing is created. So just bear that in mind, that the more complex the password, the harder this process is going to be. What are some actions you can take right this very minute? After the presentation, I want you to take a few minutes and check your passwords against the list at this URL at the bottom, so the Google short link there. Go ahead and look through it, check it, make sure you're not actually using one of the passwords on that list. Do you have a policy in place to change your administrative passwords? When was the last time you changed your password? Go ahead and think that through as well. Create a policy in your company, in your business, what have you, that you're going to change your passwords every 30 days or so. You could pick your own frequency if you want to, but it's the idea that changing it is the key. If you have a user community, this is a hint for anybody out there that's listening that's an entrepreneur and a developer. There's not really a good extension out there, or a plugin or a widget or what have you, a module in the Drupal space that I'm aware of, that causes passwords to be forced to be changed on a regular basis. We do that in the enterprise space in, say, our Windows servers. We do that in mainframes. We do that in all kinds of systems. We fail to do it in our CMSs. By just taking that small step, that is changing your password, then you'll have taken great leaps and bounds ahead of that. And while doing so, a strong password example is given to you here. That's going to be very difficult to guess and also very difficult for your users. So if you go that route, just understand that you're probably going to get a lot of requests. The next thing that is very often ignored is unused extensions or modules or plugins or widgets. maybe you tried it, maybe you were in development mode, maybe you went to something else and we're going to come back and change it. For whatever reason, you've now collected a whole list of these things. That's not a problem in of itself, except for the fact that you're probably not keeping them up to date. You probably have ignored them or forgot about them, and by doing so, you've opened yourself up to an attack. In this Joomla website example here, you'll see a whole list of things that about half of that the user was not even using. Furthermore, you'll notice over here on the right that there's an extension that says update required. While I don't really know what that is, we do know that if it was a security update, then they've made themselves vulnerable to attack. There's a number of tools out there, Blind Elephant, Spiderfoot, and a number of other things out there that can easily, what we call fingerprint, or look over your site and take a guess at what you're running. If they found something on here that was vulnerable and they had the code for it, they could easily start working to attack your site. Another method they could try is just brute forcing every known extension. And we're going to look at an example of that in a minute. So it's important that you take into account the unused extensions and what are you going to do with it? Have a plan. What I suggest is after the presentation, go ahead and check what's on your site. Is there something that's not in use? Get rid of it. You can always reinstall it. If you don't need it, believe me, you're doing yourself a favor because it'll lower the attack surface of your website. Don't ignore templates and themes. That's a big one. And I did skip over a bullet here. I apologize that if any of them need updating, take the time to update them. Users are always our weakest link in any compute platform. Oftentimes, attacks come from an internal source. They come from users. Admins are considered users. So these are two of our weakest links right here. So think about your user community. And we're going to look here in a minute at some of that. But I want you to kind of focus in on non-validated users. And what I mean by that is that's a generic term that go through your user base. Has people signed up for your site that have very strange and long emails? Is there, obvious things going on that may be a suspicion? If you feel suspicious about it, it probably needs to be removed or at least questioned, because if someone's trying to log in and using that as a frontal attack to have a place to land, and their idea is to maybe escalate themselves to admin, that may be one of the methods that they're going after. So bear in mind, users are important. What do we do in the user space? Simple but ignored things. Administrative users. How many of you right now just kind of think about it when you go to log in, is your user that your administrative user is admin? I would bet quite a few of you. One good idea is just go ahead and create a new one. Create a new user, escalate their privileges to whatever administrative level you need, and disable or delete the old one. You might go in, if necessary, and just change the name of the administrative user. I also see during a lot of times when we have hacked sites that there's multiple users who have administrative privileges. And a lot of times I'll be questioning and saying, who is this person? Well, he was my developer and he left. Or, well, they don't work here anymore. This is a great time to sit and go, why are they still set with administrative privileges? You need to go ahead and get rid of those users who should not have administrative privilege. Remember the first leg in our three-legged stool, confidentiality? We don't need people who don't need access. I know that's poor grammar, but they don't need access. Take them out, or at least reduce them down to normal, user levels. Another thing that always is ignored is reviewing your logs for attempted brute force attacks against your administrative site. If anybody on here has used WordPress, you might have been the victim recently this year of a mass brute force attack against WordPress sites. And was very successful, by the way. Many WordPress sites got hacked. That same attack has now come around, according to a Forbes article the other day, as well as from Sakuri, against Joomla sites. So kind of keeping in mind that you need to watch your logs for the multiple attacks. Now, a word about FTP. I wish we could eliminate FTP altogether. Love it and I hate it at the same time. It's very simple and quick and easy to use. However, it's one of those things that it's the source of an attack beyond belief. Here's an example that I put together for you showing cPanel how you would get into your FTP accounts. So you'd go down to the Files block, click FTP accounts, and then you want to look at all your users in the FTP login. Do you recognize every one of them? Should they all be in there? Don't know. That's up to you to look through. In this case, I put up a fake one here, and it's WT test. So if I looked through here and I saw that, I'd be curious of who that was, and I would either investigate or delete it. I've seen many, many times FTPs left open and used as a path of attack. Actions you can take right now, I've already kind of covered some of this, but go ahead and look at your administrative users, demote, delete, change. That's the real 3 things here you want to think through. Under user accounts, take a look at the user accounts, and if any are suspicious, any don't feel right, if you know for sure there's something strange about them, disable and investigate, or just delete altogether. You want to go ahead and look at your FTP accounts and do 2-3 things here. You want to remove any unused FTP accounts or FTP accounts you may have given to someone for development reasons or repair reasons or what have you. Change your FTP passwords every 30 days. Treat that as you would the administrative user. In fact, it is so vital that you change this. I would almost suggest deleting the FTP account completely until you need it and then just create it. It's very quick and easy to do so. Remove any anonymous FTP users that are assigned in your server. Some hosts, it depends on the host, but some hosts automatically assign or create, if you will, an anonymous user. That's kind of a default thing from the past, and you don't see too much of it anymore. So if it's there, you need to get rid of it. And what that means is, if it's set up properly, anyone, anywhere in the world could FTP into your site and dump files in there. Lastly, and I'm going to harp on this some more, is you want to review your logs, your FTP logs for brute force attempts. Permissions is one of those things that is highly misunderstood and just is always abused. Now, in this particular instance, I'm only speaking to the Linux crowd. If any of you are using a Windows server, this would not be the permission model on a Windows server. It's a completely different model. But in the Linux space, we have owner, group, and world. And it's vital that we understand how that works. So owner is the permission or the owner of the file or directory. So for instance, if you're the root user or the administrative user of the server and you created a file or directory, the owner would be root. And then all those permissions would flow down. So in other words, only in that case the root would have access. So we would assign that owner to, say, a new file to the correct user. The user would also belong to a group. A group is like you think of a group of users, and they have specific privileges assigned to that group. World would be anybody, for instance, browsing your site. These are some areas that we always get in trouble, and I'll tell you why. Because I've seen more often than not those set for 777, and this is a graphical example of what happens if you do that wrong. You're asking for a hacking. So in this case, you see that I have read, write, and execute permission across the board. This is, every time I've seen a hack site, this is usually there. Some file somewhere, often in the images directory or in an upload directory or what have you, is set for 777. And what causes those permission issues? Well, reasonably, there's a few things, probably a bigger list than this, but in this case, poor administration. Compromised systems, so hacked systems. Poorly coded third-party add-ons such as extensions in the Joomla space, modules in the Drupal space, or plugins or widgets in WordPress space. Maybe just a simple mistake. Maybe an admin changed it and didn't realize it. It does tend to happen. So what we can do there is, using our FTP client, we can immediately go in and make sure that everything is set correctly. In this case, you'll see that I've got a generic screen. I've taken and highlighted everything on the left in this particular server. Now I have apply to directories only, apply to files only, or apply to files and directories. What I would want to do is go ahead and just do my directories first, and I'm going to click apply to directories, and then I'm going to put 755 in there and hit go. What this client will do, in this case this is FileZilla, what it'll do is scan through the entire server, and it will change all the directories all the way down to 755, which is the proper setting, which means the owner can read, write, and execute, the group can read and execute, and the public can read and execute. But group and public cannot write to it. So in other words, they can't affect change. Now in the files, it would be a little bit differently. I would go back and select just files, but the number I'm looking for is 644, which means I'm only giving read and write to the owner and read to the group and public. for every single file on the server. This is generally the default with rare exception. There are, in certain cases, some extension developers, for some strange reason, or developers generally, who feel like they need 777 down buried in a subdirectory, and usually it's almost always the image type extensions or plugins or widgets, what have you. I don't know why that is, but that's always where it seems to be, and they require it to make it work and what have you. If you see those, quite honestly, don't. Just go find something else. So my bottom bullet here is rethink any extension or host that requires you to set your files of directories to 777 for proper operation. And as I just covered, check your file directory permissions. Generally speaking, and 99% of the time, 644 and 755 are preferred and correct. While there are exceptions to that rule, this is the general way to handle that. Patching is another thing that really is ignored quite often. It's ignored in our desktops, it's ignored in our mobile devices, and in our websites, that becomes a real problem. It's a problem because, as I said earlier, software that needs updating for maintenance reasons such as better performance is one thing, but there are so many security vulnerabilities discovered every day that it's really vital that we patch. And just for clarity, a patch is designed to fix problems or update a computer program. And really the three words I want you to focus in on, the red words. Red words win. Fixing security vulnerabilities. That is the biggest thing that we want to patch for. So you want to kind of stay on top of that and keep an eye on it. All of the major CMSs, Drupal, WordPress, Joomla, they all have the ability now to some degree or another to do updating within the administrative console. And I know that each one does it a little bit differently. No matter how they do it, take the time to update it. If you have a busy website, plan a few minutes downtime. It's really worth it because that busy website can suddenly become a busy hacked site. Bring your own malware is another great reason for patching. What I mean by that is I've seen a number of sites that have been hacked, and at the end of the day, when we looked at the logs, we discovered that it was the user's computer that started the hack. And it is invariably 100% of the time the users deny it came from them. I'll ask them to please go scan their servers or desktops rather, or mobile devices or notebooks, and they'll tell me, oh, I use such and such free scanning tool, and it doesn't show anything. I'll instruct them to go get one of the 30-day free trials, and sure enough, they'll always find a keylogger or something that grabbed their password while they were typing. So I've coined this phrase, bring your own malware, kind of playing off the bring your own device trend, which is bring your device to work, your iPhones, your Androids, whatnot. Companies are facing big problems because you might bring in something on that device. So think about that as part of your patching process, that you are taking care of every device of yours that has administrative access. And seem to having a brief trouble with our slide here. Pardon me 1 second. There it is. So actions you can take right now. Sorry, the slide's just jumped ahead of us here. Hazards of props, children, and animals. Actions you can take right now is go ahead and update your CMS. Whatever it is. Recently there was a really important WordPress release just came out to fix security problems. Joomla has their releases, Drupal has their releases, Typo3 has their releases. Everyone's going to release an update to their CMS. It's important that you go ahead and just do this. You want to review your, what I call extensions, which is, pardon me, is really a Joomla phrase, but really your third-party add-ons to whatever your CMS is. Talk to your host. How are they handling updates? How do they handle updates to their Apache core? How do they handle critical updates to, say, the server parts of the system? So the Linux operating system, the associated moving parts. How do they handle things like OpenSSL updates? Just generally speaking, how are they handling updates? Most of the time, it's probably handled just fine, but it's important that you know how they're handling it and take appropriate actions around that. Apply any updates to your own desktops, whatnot. Please, please, please install a reputable, and I say reputable in terms of not free, virus scanner. I know there's some good free ones out there, but reasonably go ahead and spend the money and get a really good commercial one that keeps up with updates on a timely basis. Logs are probably the second most ignored thing I've ever seen, and I understand why. Logs are hard to read, they're hard to deal with, yet they provide us so much valuable information. Here's just a smattering of logs that we like to look at during a hacked website. Apache access logs, FTP, CMS-specific logs, which will vary greatly by the CMS, and in this case, error logs, which could be generated by the system, XM, which is your mail, login under Joomla, Watchdog under Drupal, any number of logs here you want to kind of just keep an eye on. In regards to Apache, this is the one log I want to drill in on, focus in on with you. This is a typical Apache log, and as you can see, it's just a smattering of just tons of information and hard to follow along. We're going to show you a little trick today to learn how to read those logs very quickly and get through it. So the first thing you need to know is where to find your raw access logs, your Apache logs, if you will. So in your cPanel, and if you're not using cPanel, if you're using some other type of panel, please ask your host where they store the Apache logs. So in this case, you'll see the raw access logs. You want to click that button, and the next thing that'll come up is several different options. In this case, the very first thing we're going to focus in on is how to set up our retention policy, because I would guess that when you get here, both of these top boxes will not be checked, which means you're wiping out your logs at midnight every night. So if something happened the day before you were hacked or what have you, you would have zero record of it, and it would just be very difficult to figure it out. Log retention policy is important. So checking this very first one means that I'm going to keep my logs every night. I'm not going to erase them. And this will be forever. So what I'll just start doing, if you'll see at the bottom, here is a raw archive log for August. I'll have August, September, October, what have you. Weigh it out against how much disk space you have and what have you, but I suggest you keep them in at least every 30 days. To do so, you check both of these boxes. Now, if we want to review our logs, we could go under the domain and find your particular domain or website you're looking for. Click that. It'll download a compressed file with all the logs for that month or that period of time in there. And then any past logs we can look at here. And again, these are only Apache logs, by the way. So now that you know where to find them and how to deal with them, here's an example entry. And this is a fake IP I made up. So if you go there, I don't know what's actually there. It could be real, may not be real, but I did make it up. The rest of it's a valid Apache entry. You'll see this over and over and over and over in an Apache log. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these, or thousands and thousands and thousands, depending on how much traffic your site gets. And how we read that, or how we collect that rather, is in this format below. I don't want you to worry too much about this format, other than this is how Apache tells the browser what it wants to collect. Now breaking that down, if we look at it, the first thing we saw was the source IP. That's the visitor. And yes, it can be faked, which is also known as spoofing. 90% of the time, it's not going to be. 90% of the time, it's going to be truly, truly the valid IP address. The second thing you'll see is the dash dash. That is a very old hangover from very, very early internet days. It'll always be dash dash. It's not in use anymore. The third bullet we like to focus in on is the date and time of the visit. You'll notice a dash at 0500. That's the offset from GMT. So in this case, this was an East Coast server. It's on the East Coast of the United States. The method and resource is what did they ask for and how did they ask for it, or what did they instruct. So if it was a post, we would say post instead of get. So in this case, it's get, and we're looking specifically for this particular background. Essentially, this is part of a website page coming up. The status request, or the caret %S, is 200, which means it was a good request. Everything went as planned. And then the last number is 4302. That's the amount of bytes transferred to your client browser from your web server. I want you to look at those two numbers specifically because they're going to tell us a lot. And the very last one, if we see a giant number there several times, it means we may be transferring stuff that we shouldn't be, or there's something going on and it would be consuming our bandwidth, and our host may be sending us a note, or any number of other things. So that's an important one to watch. You might also see additional information such as what's highlighted in red here. Very simply, I mean, it just depends because every host sets theirs up slightly differently. You may see more, you may see less, but this is one of the more examples here. And in this case, this is telling us it's a Firefox browser running from a Mac. And so we kind of know what's out there. The additional information is essentially the browser type. Now, word of warning, this can be easily faked. All that having said, I want you to look at these things in red. This is an attack detected in the logs that was ignored by the person whose server this was, and they, by the way, did get hacked. This is a brute force attack going against a Joomla site, and it was trying every single Joomla extension known to man until it found one. And specifically what it was trying to do is a union select, so it's a SQL injection. And it was trying to get the information from the user database. So there's a number of things in the Joomla space that you can do to eliminate this, but overall in every single space, SQL injection is one of the top attacks in the world today. And this is what it looks like in the logs. So if you see a union plus select, you better start looking at why they're looking at your extension, widget, module, what have you, because they're trying to break into the database. Do you remember a few minutes ago I said we need to look at our logs for administrative brute force logins? This is a literal one. Again, the IP is changed to protect the bad guy, as it were. But this is a literal example, a real-world example of someone trying to break in using different passwords over and over and over and over into an administrator section of a website. You'll notice it's 225, 42, 43, 43, 49. I actually took out between 43 and 49 for clarity of the page here, but it was just hundreds of different passwords being attempted over and over. Unfortunately, most CMSs don't block multiple attempts. So hint, hint, there's another opportunity for you entrepreneurs out there to come up with a way to protect websites from brute force attack by simply locking down the administrator until this can be dealt with. What can you do right now? Well, take some time to learn to read your logs. I know it's boring reading, and if you have trouble falling asleep at night, that's a great way to do it, but it's so important. You want to think about how you want to keep your logs. It's important you establish a policy for log retention. Mine is keep them at least 30 days, because if you're hacked in the last 30 days, at least we'll have some guidance to help you with when you come to us and say, please help me. We can at least look back and see how the person got in, or persons, or bot, or what have you. During your log review, you want to look for various types of attacks, as I pointed out, such as the SQL injection. You want to look for the brute force. You may want to look for error codes in there, like multiple 404 pages showing up. That means page not found, by the way. So those are all things that actions you can take in your logs right now. Backup and restore. I want you to think, when was the last time you took a backup? And you may say yesterday, you may say today, you may say I do it every day, you may say I haven't done it in a long time. Whatever it is, it's often disregarded. Now here's my second question. When was the last time you attempted a restore? Even if it was a test restore. So the reason I highlight that is, do you know if your backup can be restored? That's the important thing. A lot of times, again, hacked customers come to us and say, I have a backup, and then we go to try and apply the backup. It's either corrupted as well because they were hacked so long ago, or it wasn't properly backed up and they never tested to restore. How do we do that? There's a lot of different utilities or extensions or add-ons or modules, what have you, that are just beautiful with each of the CMS world. But real simply, in cPanel, we have a couple of methods. We have our backup wizard to conduct backups and restores. And then we have backups here, if you see on your screen, that we can choose those individual backup archives to pull down. And what that looks like in the wizard is I can do a full or partial backup. I can do a backup and restore. I can do my mail. I can do my mail forwarders, SQL databases. Almost everything you need right here to do good, solid backups. This is an extremely manual process, but it's a lifesaver if you set out a policy to use this. Sometimes it's also good, in my opinion, to do in addition to a backup, because all of these CMSs are driven out of a database for the most part. I can think of one exception, but for the most part, the audience here, I'm sure you're using one of the ones that are driven out of a database, is to learn to make an individual backup out of PHP MyAdmin of your SQL database. because you can almost restore your entire site if you just have the database itself. There are exceptions to that if you've lost, very specific content. However, for the most part, you can recover most everything here. To export or quote dump, which means to create a backup of your SQL database, go into your database here, click export. That'll save it out as a compressed file. Make that part of your backup policy. To do a restore or import, you would click the import button to bring that information back in. So the methods again are you can set up your backup wizard to do a regular run. That's going to be very disk space specific, because if you use it and you run out of disk space and you're not sure why you're running out, that could be a problem. So kind of take that into consideration. Maybe one of your CMSs has a really great Amazon backup tool where you can send your stuff to the cloud. Think about that one. Overall though, whatever you do, make weekly backups of your files and your SQL database, and use FTP to pull that off your server to a local disk, a local hard drive, something of that nature, so you have an off-server backup, just in case. So actions you can take right now is choose your backup method and use it. Set up your backup policy, and I say backups off the server, and again I want to highlight the restore function, and you do that by creating a plan. Maybe you buy a second hosting account to just use it to restore, to test your restores. Maybe you do that on a MAMP or an XAMPP server at your house or office. You need to decide, where am I going to restore my backups to? Where are those backups themselves going to be kept? How do I keep them safe? Do I put them on a DVD? Do I keep them on a hard drive? Whatever. Who is going to do the backups? If you have a small company and you go on vacation and you're the only one that can do a restore, think about that. You need to make sure that more than one person can do it, or the documentation's there. You got to think worst case scenario here. And lastly, you want to develop a test plan. And that test plan essentially means you're going to test out your ability to handle this. You're going to test out your ability to respond. In essence, a lot of people don't like to think about this, but you need to have a plan for disaster. And that's my last slide. I'm going to turn it back over to Stephen. It's been a real pleasure with you talking about the 7 steps, and please let us know if we can help you out.
Thank you, Tom, very much for your presentation and the valuable information that you provided. Core PHP offers a variety of different security services for security audits and remediation services. We can go through and look up any issues that you have on your site, dehack or clean up any of the site itself. We also offer custom Joomla, WordPress, and Drupal development, website design, and other services that are available at www.corephp.com/services. Now we also have a couple special offers for us so you can contact us at 269-979-5582 extension 1, or you can write to us at sales@corephp.com, or you could just browse and go to our website www.corephp.com, as well as Twitter us or tweet us at CorePHP, or like us on Facebook at facebook.com/CorePHP. We have a couple special offers for everybody here today. You can get 10% off our Core PHP security offerings. Feel free to give us a call and use the security code or use the coupon code SECURITY, and we'll provide you with complete security services for 10% off, or register and purchase our products online for 20% off utilizing the coupon code SECURITY. It is valid from Tuesday, September 17th through Sunday, September 23rd until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We also have special offers from Joomla Shack. Use SafeSite as your coupon code and you will receive 20% off of Joomla Shack products, templates, extensions, online training, and the club. It's valid from September 17th through Sunday, September 22nd until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And our last offer for the day is 33% discount for all JVitals products. So please use JV-SECU-0001 as the coupon code. It is valid from September 17th through the end of September 23rd. That is the conclusion of our presentation, and I thank everyone for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to post it in the chat available in the GoToWebinar. If you have any other questions, feel free to send it to support@corephp.com, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you, and that concludes our presentation.